Bueno, pues saludos gente, bienvenidos una vez más a estas pláticas que estamos teniendo a 2, 3 o 4 jugadores. En esta ocasión, y es nuestra primera entrevista en inglés. It will be our first interview ever in English.
Excellent.
Sí, ¿verdad? Creo que
yeah, it's going to be our first one.
Yeah. Our first interview in English. So if I have like an English bar, yeah? That when I'm speaking English, it's going down, and then I'm not going to speak English.
Good.
So if that happens, I'm very sorry. We have here Jason Matthews.
We are going to have claps here and that's and fireworks.
An eagle maybe.
Who is a board game designer. It's also a political junkie, a history fanatic, a lobbyist, and also a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right?
All those bad things.
that's something that all the bad things in just one person.
Right.
What's that, man?
Yeah.
Co-designer of Twilight Struggle, which is one of the best board games ever made. Speaking about war games, or that's what I read. So
I have a question about that. Can we start?
Yeah, we can start with that. We can start with that.
Start with that.
That's
Jason?
great.
Okay, perfect. So here in Mexico we have this saying that war game. Some people say that should be with inside a box in paper war games. Other people, as myself, sometimes say that the war game is the ones with the miniatures. So what do you think?
Large armies, no? With
large armies or
with
skirmish or something like that, like Warhammer, Blood and Plunder,
Right.
as we mentioned before. So what do you think about that? Do you think war games or paper war games are fighting against the miniature war games? Do you think, or we can live
Together. In harmony.
Yes.
Yes, we have to live together because the real enemies are the Eurogame players. So
I love that. So the Euro game. Okay, got it.
You can't say that because David Tursi
that's
beat
right.
you in your own game.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
a couple minutes ago.
a couple.
Yeah, they were playing
Really?
and David Tursi beat him. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
he
true.
was lucky.
Sad.
Europeans.
Very sad.
Europe.
No, we found one piece on the ground, so that's why he lost.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, though, in my own development in the hobby, the first thing that got me in was Axis and Allies. My dad, I was 14, I think, and my dad bought Axis and Allies for the Christmas it came out, and I went crazy, and we played every weekend, and et cetera, et cetera. And then, just by weird coincidence, I was looking around for more games like Axis and Allies, and Origins, which is one of our at the time it was a big wargaming convention, it was moving every year. And that year, just by happenstance, it came to Los Angeles. And so my mom drove me because, I'm a dumb teenager. Yeah, and dropped me off. And the first thing I walked into in that room was almost as big as this living room area, Wagram, the Napoleonic battle. And they were doing it since it was like the 150th or 200th anniversary or whatever. They were doing it one-on-one, and they had this enormous village built and all of these miniatures. And then I left Axis and Allies, and I started going blind and painting collars on stupid Russians and that sort of thing, and obsessing about uniform details and the terrain and the things that miniature wargamers do. I think personally, there are some things that miniature wargames do extremely well, better than a cardboard war game. And I think at the tactical level, I prefer to play with toy soldiers.
Okay.
But for the kind of game that I design, you can't really do this with miniatures. You could stick plastic toys into the box, but it doesn't mean anything and it doesn't really do anything. So I think in general, there's cross-pollination between both miniature, at least in the United States, miniatures war gamers, almost all of them have a regular cardboard collection, and vice versa. Most of us who are into cardboard games at some point played Warhammer or any of those other things.
Okay.
And there's no real reason as long as role players and Eurogamers exist, there's no reason for us not to get along.
Okay, perfect. I love that answer. I love that. You know.
You're happy with that?
Yeah, I know who are our real enemies now. Okay. Got it.
David Tursi. Yeah.
Is he going to be here tomorrow?
Yeah, maybe tomorrow, or maybe later.
We need to change that script tomorrow, okay?
They must play again, and he must play. So you were talking about Axis and Allies. So that was your first approach to board games.
Well, I had played all the family games, Monopoly and Risk, and all of those, Scrabble, all of those things. And my family liked games, so we would play those sorts of things. But the first kind of hobby game that I was exposed to was Axis and Allies. My dad knew that I was already kind of a history nerd, and he thought, oh, this would make a good Christmas gift. And he was right.
And you actually start painting your miniatures?
Yes. I used to be...
Axis and Allies can be painted?
Oh, yeah, not Axis and Allies. No, the
okay.
next
the next generation.
Yeah, because I know people who paint
they do.
the Axis
Yes,
and Allies.
I have seen it. I mean, it's hard to paint on plastic or the old plastic because it would chip. But now all the miniatures are in plastic, so it's different.
But you actually paint your
I did.
miniatures.
I painted a bunch of Napoleonics. I painted the Boer War. I painted American Civil War naval. I did a bunch of it.
Okay, got it.
With which game did you lost your mind?
In board games?
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I'm super impressed by and wish I was the one who designed instead of somebody else. I remember when the first time I saw El Grande, I was like, oh, this is the greatest game I've ever played, and it is an incredibly good Euro game. Also, when Dominion came out, it was sort of like a head-slapping moment. Oh, why didn't any of us might have thought of, oh, let's do deck construction this way, but none of us did. And Donald Vaccarino has been able to retire because he had the insight first. In terms of what I tend to admire, though, that's a little bit off the beaten path for wargamers, I'm a real huge fan of Michael Schacht, who is a German game designer. He designed Zularetto and a bunch of others, but he won Spiel des Jahres for Zularetto.
Okay.
And what he does that I am so impressed with is he makes a binary decision, yes or no, this or that, and infuses so much strategy into that kind of problem.
Yeah.
And so if you're 5 years old, you can play a Michael Schacht game just as easily as I can, but the 5-year-old won't see the strategy that's 3 or 4 steps ahead. But if you're a good gamer, you can play that game at a higher level. And so I'm always very impressed with that capability. Me, I throw the kitchen sink in, so it's a messy, sloppy design.
And why did you decide to design a board game?
So Ananda and I, who I designed Twilight Struggle with, we were both play testers for GMT, and we play tested some great stuff: Wilderness War, Volko's designs, older war games at this stage. Yeah. But they kept sending us stuff, and it kept getting longer and longer and longer. And believe it or not, Twilight Struggle was to claw the time back, because the games that we admired were 3 or 4 hours. We the People, the first CDGs, Wilderness War, Paths of Glory, and then they get going from 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours, 9 hours, and we're like, I've got a job, I've got kids, I can't play games this long anymore.
Yeah.
So even though Twilight Struggle in modern times is a long game, at the time we designed it, it was to shorten playtime for war games. And that was our initial inspiration.
And why did you choose the Cold War?
Well,
is that something that always liked you in history?
Honestly, we started our first design was going to be the Spanish Civil War.
Okay.
And because we think this card-driven approach is very applicable to kind of revolutions or internal conflicts because they're political. And
Franco.
yes, Franco, right.
Yeah.
Well, I started reading about the Spanish Civil War, and I realized I could spend the rest of my life reading about the Spanish Civil War and not quite understand all the politics of it. And so we're like, we need to change topics. And one of our friends suggested the Cold War. And since I'm old, I was like, yes, the Cold War is perfect. I know all the events. I lived through a bunch of them. And so that's how we got on the topic. I think we were also lucky because when the game finally came out, after 9/11 in the United States, there was a weird nostalgia for the Cold War because the situation with terrorism made the world seem worse, more chaotic, more unpredictable, and the Cold War had a certain stability to it.
Okay.
Yeah, even if you hated the Russians, you knew how they operated. Whereas in the new world,
it's kind of weird. Or,
uncertain,
okay.
unstable.
Uncertain. Yep, uncertain.
And this is your first board game, or did you design something?
That was the first one.
And then what came?
The next game that I designed was 1960, Making of the President, which was to sort of Eurofy the Twilight Struggle mechanism. It's about the election between President Kennedy and eventually President Nixon, but then Vice President Kennedy or Nixon. The 1960 election is very famous in the United States for being super close, but also super important for the change in the country.
What happened?
Kennedy and the right.
Is that included in the game?
Yeah, that's what. Well, no, it's not really about the Kennedy presidency, but it is about the themes of the two campaigns and why, when Kennedy was elected, the country went in a new kind of direction. We start dealing with civil rights issues and the other stuff that has plagued our country for quite some time. But we began addressing it then. Anyway, so that's a much shorter game. It plays in about half the time as Twilight Struggle, and it removes the dice. We did all the things to make Eurogamers happy. We put blocks in, no chits. A
lot of blocks, and this is this will be good, and this will be machinery, and this will
swap blocks, red color, blue color.
What do you think about the new wave of games that are using an app with a laptop or a cell phone, or what do you think about
the famous
that?
transmedia games?
Transmedia games.
Yeah.
That's an excellent word. I need to add that to my vocabulary. I can't tell you why, because it seems like they should be an excellent idea. But there's something, I don't know what to say about it, there's something fiddly about everybody having to take out their phone. And I don't know what the barrier is, but none of those games, well, there are a couple of exceptions, but few of those games seem to have really taken off. And I can't tell you why. It's not like I sit at a board game table in my phone, so why do I care that I use it as part of the game? But there is some weird barrier to it. And maybe it's just, whenever you have to rely on technology, something goes wrong, and if we all had to use our phones for a game, someone's phone wouldn't work. There'd be those kinds of problems. But all of that said, I think transmedia games could do things much better than just a board game without the additional.
Maybe that's a thing for the new generations, right?
Yeah.
Because I have a daughter. My daughter is just here, and he just bought. I just bought the Kitchen Rush.
Kitchen Rush.
And you have to add all the cards and the.
No. Soviet Kitchen.
Soviet Kitchen.
Soviet Kitchen.
Yep.
Yeah,
Soviet
no,
Kitchen.
it's not Kitchen Rush. Soviet Kitchen.
Soviet
you know
Kitchen.
the game?
No.
It's a game where you need a phone because all cards have a QR code.
QR code.
And you have to make a color, right?
Yeah.
You have to make a color,
so
a particular color with cards of everyone. It's a game that I can't play because I'm colorblind. So so I can play it. And you put the QR code in the phone, and then the same phone or the app tells you how close you were to match the color.
The color. So, but my daughter, she's 12 years old, but she was like crazy doing.
She loved it.
Yeah, she loved it.
And you know, the new generations, right?
Yeah.
I prefer not to have that type of technology when we are playing. Right?
I tend to agree. But, you know, in wargaming, hidden information should be important because it's very important in war, right? You don't know where your opponent's pieces are, you don't know what their capabilities are, but we don't have war games that use phones for that, and I can imagine a good one. Like it could be very useful to simulate that part of the experience.
That's the fog of war, right?
Right, exactly. That's the fog of war.
Yeah.
And your phone can provide fog.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I don't know a board game which you need a war game which needs
A war game?
A war game which needs an app. I mean I have a U-boat. You know,
U-boat. Yes.
You need an app. You need a tablet, but because you are on a submarine. From Germany,
right?
And you can use the tablet to look through I don't know how to say
the
it.
Telescope. Yes.
Well, the telescope. Yeah.
And all the war games, you need to make your own list.
Yeah.
To have, and you usually go to an app to make that list. But
well,
then you print
in miniature
the list.
war games.
Miniature war games.
Yeah,
Miniature war games.
Yeah. Your army list. Yes. Right.
Yes, to arm your list, and then that's it. No, but not in this type of cardboard war games. I don't think so. None of them at the moment use.
Agreed.
Apps,
I mean, it might also be an interesting way, since so many wargame players are interested in having a solo experience or a bot. I think an app bot could be much faster than chart. You know.
Yeah, maybe if you don't have someone to play Twilight Struggle, you can have a bot in an app, but maybe you can use the video game, right?
Exactly.
That's what we call here in Mexico the forever alone.
Yeah.
But you can play video games. That's it, right?
Precisely.
Well, a lot of people like solo games. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
But I would prefer people find friends and
Sure. Sure. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, that's the idea.
And
it's
also
a social hobby.
Yeah, it's a social hobby, and it's also my thinking, because if you need a phone, the idea is to get rid of the phone, right? To play and to be in the table.
I will show him the video of you when we were playing, like 10 people playing the game, and this guy was just with his phone.
I was uploading a story in
Yeah.
Instagram for the channel. Amigos, interrumpo brevemente para darle las gracias a todos los que hacen posible estas entrevistas. A Devir México, a MXP, a Mesas de Juego Acomodado, a Marlúdico y a nuestro amigo Gio, que nos ayudó con la logística. Si les están gustando estas entrevistas, denle like, compartan y suscríbanse a nuestro canal. Do you ever imagine such success about Twilight Struggle? I mean, it was, or it is, in the number 2 of the BGG, I don't know.
It had been very high for a long time.
For a long time, yeah.
No, I had no earthly expectation of that at all. I do always give some credit to Alan Moon, the designer of Ticket to Ride, and a number of other very successful games. But he ran a convention called The Gathering, and it's a bunch of muckety mucks, and European publishers come. And it's a long convention. It's like 2 weeks. And I was going up, and the first week had already happened. I can't take 2 weeks. So I went, and I show up, and everybody, as I come into the convention, everybody's like, Jason, have you talked to Alan? I'm like, no, I just got here. What are you talking about? And they said, well, he got your game, and he's locked himself away in his room, and he hasn't played anything else but Twilight Struggle since.
Really?
Yeah. And then he said something publicly very nice about Twilight Struggle. And then after that, Eurogamers who would otherwise not ever look at Twilight Struggle or GMT games, because our premier American Euro game designer said, yes, play this. It helped quite a bit. And so that's I attribute a lot of the early success of the game to that fact.
To Alan.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. So you owe something to Ticket to Ride.
I do.
No, he owed something to Eurogamers.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh
That's
my
right.
gosh. You need to cut this part. That's our enemy. Now I know that those are our enemies.
You have some other games like Founding Fathers and Campaign Manager, and they are also historical, right?
Yeah, yes. Founding Fathers for sure. Campaign Manager, when I designed it, was just a couple of years after the election, so historical in a sense, but yes,
Okay.
a little more contemporary politics.
Okay, but all of your games are like politics or
Yes,
historical politics.
I'm
Yeah.
interested in the intersection between politics and conflict. And even I did a game based on Campaign Manager about the Reformation and the Catholic Church and the Protestants and Martin Luther. And that is also politics, right? That the core of it is, okay, yes, there's a religious component of it and a theological component, but the main thing that's going on there is politics.
So
Very nice.
what do you think is your favorite part of history? Your favorite conflict, your favorite event?
So one of the reasons I designed Founding Fathers was in undergrad I took a class where we went day by day through the Constitutional Convention.
Okay.
And it was the best class I've ever taken. And so I think I love that the most, that era. And, you know, I'm a lawyer too, so we all care about that nonsense.
Got it.
Powdered wigs are good.
What's next for you for Twilight Struggle? Because I know that you have another game.
Yes, so already with GMT, but not yet with Devere, I have Twilight Struggle Red Sea, which is an attempt, because I know a lot of people have bought Twilight Struggle based on its reputation, and they put it on their shelf of shame and it hasn't come down. It's long and it looks intimidating if you don't know. So I designed a game specifically to make Twilight Struggle more accessible. It is designed physically to teach the game, and it plays in about 45 minutes. It's really a lunchtime game, and so now people can play that and then pull the other one off the shelf. And that's it.
How long is Twilight Struggle?
I mean, for me, not very long.
Yeah, because you already know. Right?
So for most people, for their first game, it's going to run around 4 hours, and that's because you have to read all the
Read a lot,
cards,
yeah.
and then theoretically also think about the cards, but at least read them. But I can play a game of Twilight Struggle in 2 hours, no problem. But I understand that not everybody moves at that pace.
The regular time on the box, it says 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 hours, so
Regular
it's
time,
4
yeah.
hours. Yeah,
For us,
double
4
that
hours.
time. Sure.
Yeah.
For me, 5 for sure. Because you need to read everything. So
Yeah, and if it has colors, it's worse.
it's
Yeah.
going to be the worst for you.
And unfortunately, even if you played Twilight Struggle before, if it's another 6 months before you play it again,
You
then you
need
forget all the
Yeah,
cards
you
again.
forget-
You have to
you
read
forget
the
Reread
cards.
almost
Yeah,
everything.
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Here at Nega XP, you will have free cards, like
Yes.
a limited edition,
Indeed.
and it's Mexican, right?
Yes.
It's like a part of the conflict.
Devere, they're a great company, they're great people, and when they invited me, they were like, well, is there something we can do for Mexico? And I'm like, well, let's add a few cards, because Mexico is in Twilight Struggle, it's an important country in Twilight Struggle, but Mexico's role in the Cold War is interesting, different. They maintain close relations with the United States throughout the Cold War, but they were also close with Cuba. And you know, there was a thriving communist party in Mexico for most of the Cold War, and so they're playing this balancing act. And so we added 2 cards, one pro-U.S. kind of a CIA round up the communist card, which unfortunately the Mexican government did, and then a card about the fact that Fidel Castro and Che Guevara met here in Mexico. And this is kind of the birthplace of the revolution.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the cards.
Those are the
right?
cards.
Those are
yes.
the cards.
Yeah, and so we're giving them out free to players tomorrow.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. What piece of advice can you give to all new or all the designers out there?
I have a lot of advice on this subject, but I would start with it's important to have thick skin. You need, as a matter of fact, I say this and I mean it very sincerely. I kind of prefer to get bad reviews because I want to hear I've gotten enough praise, so it's easy for me to say this.
No,
now.
yeah, you're absolutely right, because here in Mexico, the designers, you tell a bad thing about the game, and they are like, oh, yeah,
you're not my friend.
You're not my friend.
You're not my friend. I don't want to hear about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your real friend is the one who tells you, no, this is bad. You need to fix this.
You need to fix it, to change it. Yeah.
And that is it's a very hard thing, especially when you're a first-time designer and you're a little fragile. But if you're going to go on in it, you really need to build up that kind of layer and understand that if someone criticizes your game, they're helping you. So that's my first bit of advice. My second bit is, design to make yourself happy. If you're happy with the game, that's the main thing. And that's who I don't design for everybody else. I design for me. If I think it's fun, it's fun. If I don't think it's fun, it's not ready.
I think that same applies to when you're painting your miniatures. If it's
Paint
good for you,
right.
it's
good
perfect.
enough.
It's good
exactly.
enough.
Plus, I'm blind, so it's.
Yeah, so if you're blind, you can't paint your miniatures, and it's okay.
Yeah,
whatever,
also good.
Whatever everybody says about them.
Yeah, gray plastic is fine.
About the community, yeah, and to finish, about the community, how do you see the differences between the community in the United States? I know that you go to a lot of other conventions in the United States, and here that you have one day in Mega XP.
Well, I was saying this to the De Beer guys the other day, and I think that Latin America and Latin culture has an advantage in that people are friendly, people are engaged and engaging. You can walk around Gen Con without seeing anyone smile for 30 minutes.
Okay.
You can't walk around in this convention 10 seconds without seeing people smiling and engaging and wanting. So we're in a social hobby, and it's good for people to like other people. It helps. And as I was explaining in some other interview, the difference between our games and everybody else's games is, like standard family games, is that we require ambassadors. We have to have people who say, this is a good game, I'm going to teach you the rules. And I think in Latin America and Latin culture, because people are social in that way and less reserved compared to Americans and certainly compared to Germans, it's an advantage for growing the hobby quickly. And to a certain extent, you can see it. When Spain had no hobby 15 years ago. Mexico had no hobby 10 years ago. And look at how fast it's become a real thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is growing and growing every year.
Yeah, it's fantastic
Yeah.
and exciting.
Last year, 8,000 people, more or less. Now, I don't know how much, but they expect 13.
Something.
Yeah.
They expect 13,000. So we are growing.
Fantastic.
As a community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
last question.
Yeah.
Tequila or mezcal?
God, they're both deadly.
Perfect answer. Thank you so much.
I have another question. What about Lucha Libre?
Oh,
Did
it
you
was
enjoy it?
so
Because
good.
I know you.
It was such a so I didn't put this together until last night. I was reading something about Lucha Libre, but because in Lucha Libre as opposed to WWE or F or whatever.
AEW.
Yeah. Your welterweight class is the popular class, so the guys are big but smaller than our gigantic heavyweight guys. The acrobatics that they're doing are super impressive and super dramatic.
It's
so
a show.
Yeah, it's great fun, great spectacle.
That's something that my girlfriend always says. Hey, you are going to watch your soap operas for men. Yeah, because
Yeah, they are.
I love the WWE
He loves
and
the
the
WWE.
AEW, and I also love the Lucha Libre. So I know that the Lucha Libre is like the entertainment sports, and the other guys are like the conflict,
Right.
and like our soap operas for men, you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. I like that you have the good guys and bad guys just like right up front.
Yeah.
There's no ambiguity.
Even with the music, right?
Yes.
Even with the music, and if they go out with a couple of guys, bad guys, those are the bad guys. If
Exactly.
they go out with the girls, the pretty girls, they are the
There's the good guys.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, precisely.
Where can we find you?
Well, of course, I'm on Board Game Geek, and I'm on Twitter, Jason DC 197. No, Jason DC Matthews. Sorry, and then on Facebook, Jason Matthews. There are a lot of Jason Matthews in the world, but I have Twilight Struggle kind of icon, so it's easy enough to identify me there. But happy to connect with anybody and everyone.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Jason.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much
having us,
for being here. These like 40 minutes. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming to Mega XP. Y muchas gracias a todos por habernos escuchado. Amigo, ¿algo más?
No, pues miren, ya saben, nuestros verdaderos enemigos son los que juegan,
juegan
euros. Entren a los wargames, ya sean de cartón, ya sean de miniaturas, lo que sea, pero odiemos a los euros. No, no es cierto, no los odien. We are not going to hate the euros, guys. No. They need to exist. Necesitan
I know that you
existir.
speak a little bit of Spanish, so I don't know if you understood.
Yeah, no, I understood.
Yeah, okay.
I like. I mean, I play Euros. Don't tell anyone, but I play.
Muchas gracias.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much.
Yeah,
Gracias.
thank you.
Nos vemos en esta edición.
Adiós. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
That was amazing.
Great. Thank you.